Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justformorefix.com or on Twitter at justformorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to talk about cosmic horror and RPGs. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to Just More Fix. Couple quick announcements before we get things rolling today. I need to quit saying that, and I keep saying that in my head, but I always do it, and it makes me mad.
Announcements.
So, first off, you may have noticed that we missed an episode, and that's because we went on vacation, and I thought we would be able to get some recording in before we left, and we had a short little vacation. We went up to Chicago area, so we missed an episode.
What really happened was that I was trying to learn how to stop time, and I thought I had it nailed down, and we could just skip, and as it turns out, haven't quite mastered that skill yet.
So it's your fault then. I'm going with that. I like this plan. I like this. But we are back on our regular schedule now, and not going anywhere. And occasionally on my end of things, I get a little edited out. So I had a little break, and we're good to go now. A couple times a year we do this, and miss an episode or two. But we are back and still going strong and going to have a good time. So second announcement is Indie RPG Day is coming this Sunday, July 14th. Sunday. From 12 to 4, you can come down. I'm super excited this time, and I'm going to plug my game because I'm really, really excited about it. So I'm running Itcher's B, which is a surreal noir game, but I'm doing it with a sort of German expressionist film twist, so like the dark Nosferatu, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Awful.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be great. And I'm hoping it is terrible in all of the good ways that noir and German expressionist movies are terrible. So it is either going to be an amazing, terrible gaming story of where I dropped the ball and things went way off the rails, or my actual hope is that it goes really well. So we'll see how that goes.
And the Quiet Year is going to be happening as well.
Isn't it?
I think so. There were pictures of mad props. It looks like a definite go to me.
All right. Well, we'll see. So, hopefully we see you guys there.
It is occasionally questionable, but whenever there is a level of props involved, it's pretty much guaranteed at that point that he's in.
So I'm super excited, and I'm going to run a game that I have never really ran or even play tested or have even a barely a vague idea of what I'm going to do. And so, hopefully it's a terrible accident that turns out well. Second announcement is Gen Con is coming up. So hopefully, if you're out there and you like games, you can make the pilgrimage to Gen Con. And we are going to be in one of the open RPG areas on Thursday from 8 o'clock till whenever. And we're going to hang out and play games and run games and do different stuff. So we're not sure what ballroom that the open RPG space is in. So we'll be making that announcement on social media. So if you want to come and check us out and play some games with us, follow us either on Facebook or Twitter or wherever at. And hopefully we'll see you guys there. So that'll be Thursday at 8 p.m. Third announcement is the Hastings party. I haven't made a lot of posts about it on our Patreon about the production of it. I've just been busy with other things, but production is moving right along. I'm waiting for the finals of the artwork to come in and going to get those put in there in the layout, and it should go. Should go. And we are on track to have that done this month in July. And the plan is to have those printed before Gen Con. And then I'm going to bring them to Gen Con with me. So if you're going to be at Gen Con and you're a Patreon supporter that would be getting a hard copy of our zine, we'll be more than happy to deliver it to you there. And even run Hastings Party for you guys if you want to come check it out. All right, so today we're going to talk about cosmic horror and RPGs. And we've spent a ton of time talking about horror. And we'll probably continue to spend a ton of time talking about horror because we love horror of all flavors, basically.
For horror.
But today we're going to specifically talk about cosmic horror because there was a post on a forum I think it was on Reddit actually, on the RPG Reddit, and someone asked about how to do cosmic horror, and I realized that, I gave my 2 cents for whatever it's worth, and I realized that we hadn't actually talked about cosmic horror on here before. So the whole cosmic horror thing, for those of you that don't know, kind of comes out of H.P. Lovecraft and Robert Chambers and August Derleth and all that sort of Lovecraftian, Cthulhu-ish style horror, right? And traditionally, most of that gaming, that horror style gaming, is done through either Trail of Cthulhu or Call of Cthulhu, right? We've got lots and lots of episodes about, raising the fever pitch and suspense and horror and how to do that. But today we're specifically only going to focus on the cosmic horror side of things. So if you had to pick 3 things that made to differentiate like any other version of horror from cosmic horror, right? What would they be?
Oh, I didn't think you were going to lead with that. I thought we were going to go back and forth, so I only came up with 2 so far I thought I would have all this time to consider.
We can go back and forth. So do you want me to start?
Sure.
I'm going to start with the easy one, which is scale. So for cosmic horror, right, it has to be...
No. See, I picked... My first one was infinite. So that's basically what you're talking about here. But go ahead, and I'll see what I can add
Well,
in.
I figure it would be they would be kind of similar, right? But so for me, cosmic horror doesn't involve... like small stakes, right? It has to be like larger than life stuff, like Cthulhu will rise from the ocean and destroy the world, or Hastur will break through and destroy everyone's memory, or destroy everyone's
that's
mind.
That's actually different than the way I was going with mine. So
okay, right on. So, but like that's really what it comes down to. Is it's like world breaking things. Now that doesn't mean at the very outset of the game, it's straight into Cthulhu's rising from the deep, right? Or you're going to see the King in Yellow in the theater, right? That's the climax of it, right? But it's always moving towards that, and that is the end game. And players should probably know that the end of this, and any kind of a Trail of Cthulhu kind of a style game, that it's going to be something that is world breaking that we're trying to stop, right? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you want to kind of spin off of that? Because you said infinite. So where does yours differ from what I was talking about there?
So you're talking about scale of encounter
and consequences.
Right. When I say infinite, I mean that the problem is never ending. And so you see this a lot in the Cthulhu mythos, but I think the way that you illustrate it in a game and the way that you often see it illustrated in the stories is where your group is solving this problem, and at some point they realize this is the 20th time in the last millennia that someone has been trying to solve this problem. So even after I'm gone, even after we supposedly stem this thing off, it's just going to keep happening again and again and again and again. Because you're basically dealing with something that is beyond the scope of time. It is infinite.
No, I agree. And I think there's actually the 3 things that I have, there's a lot of overlap between them, right? And they're kind of thematically very tied together. And what you're going into is very, very closely tied to something else. But that's my sort of my high point for what cosmic horror is for me. So my next one is inhuman, right? So I think it's important to set the different, or you might even say abnormal, right? So you need to establish this, like you do in any kind of horror, that this is the normal world, right? Mm-hmm. And then in my mind, in cosmic horror stuff, you have this bridge between the normal and the abnormal, right?
Right.
So that bridge in most cases is like cultists and weird phenomena that involve people, right? And then, so they're kind of relatable, but they've like crossed over. They're bad guys now, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And then what makes it cosmic horror is the inhuman aspect of it now. And so those are quite literally your elder gods, if you want to go all the way and put the pedal to the floor. But it also involves like the Migo and the Shoggoths and all these, the Hounds of Tindalos, all these creatures, deep ones or whatever, and they are not human. They are very drastically far apart from human, and in every way. So not just in how they look and how they walk around, like this is a big Shoggoth thing and it's got a ton of legs and it belches forth life and whatever. Sure, that's the easy way to go about it, but also I turn back to the bacon and sandals morality, right? I think we've talked about that a little bit, but it's been a long time. So like, most morality for people is based off of right and wrong or good and evil or some kind of dichotomy that way, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the best way I saw it illustrated was in some kind of a meme, and it was bacon and sandals. And those are the 2 spectrums of morality for some of these creatures. Why? Don't know. You can't fathom it. You can't think on the same timeline, the same level, the same intellect as them. It's just not human. So why do they do things? Who knows, right? We're basically ants to them, and we're just in this sort of cosmic game. And that's just how they see us. So does that sort of make sense? I mean, there's like the inhuman thing, I think is kind of, at the very basic level, it's just they're creatures, right? But I think to really drive home the inhuman part of it, you need to make it more than that and sort of address the ways that they are different and sort of drive those home.
Yeah, absolutely. My second one was actually alien. So, meaning the exact same thing, basically. Like, it is completely different than everything that you are, in appearance and function and everything. So, I don't really know how to encapsulate the other one that I came up with, but so there's a certain amount of science that goes along with cosmic horror for me.
Yeah. No, I didn't think
distinguishes
about that at all.
it, like, not to the point where, like, it's sci-fi, but... when you talk about like sacred geometry and astronomy and like it's like horror for, book nerds.
Well, I feel like, and it's also interesting because to mention science, because it's always things that are like at the edge of science, like at the edge of the current science of whatever time period you're playing in.
Well, it's kind of like this blending of science and magic.
Right.
Right. But it distinctly sets it apart from like a fairy tale or just regular human on human horror. Yeah. Like there's this other intellectual aspect to it. Mm.
And I think, I can't remember who it is that says it, but there's a quote about...
Oh, that's what I'm calling it now. Intellectual horror.
Oh, ooh. But I can't remember who says it. There's a quote about how like all science is magic before it's understood, but I think specifically in this way, it's more approached from a scientific aspect. So it has a kind of a different flavor to it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree. But it's like, I hadn't thought about that because like so many of the games or stories that are in there, there's some kind of scientific reasoning that's trying to happen, and that's what makes it feel otherworldly and alien even in a way, is that like you have this expert in his field who just can't quite seem to get the answers to line up quite right with what his current technology is.
Well, and there's generally this scientific sense of exploration that sparks off the problem to begin with. It's like it's just like with Hellraiser, right? Like you've ran out of things to occupy your mind and interest here on this earthly realm, so now you're seeking out what's next. And it's always a very human thing to do, right? Like I have to know what else there is. There must be something more and better and different and bigger, and you're going to find whatever it is. And even if you don't quite understand it, you're going to seek to unleash it so that you can experience whatever that thing is.
Right on. I hadn't even considered that. That's not even one of the ones that even kind of popped in my head. And it kind of, so many of these overlap together because the science part of it kind of ties back to the inhuman part in a way, because it showed like through the use of science, you show how these things can't be human or, of human origin or whatever.
It's beyond understanding, but the only way that I can figure that out is by trying to understand it and then failing.
Try and fail. Right on. So my final one is Hopelessness. And I feel like this is really what sets off cosmic horror in my mind. And it ties right back.
I feel like that's in any horror.
Well, but let me give you examples of how in my mind for cosmic horror, how Hopelessness works. And this kind of ties back into your infinite thing, is that there are multiple cults that are going to do this thing, right? So if you stop this one, it doesn't matter. There's another cult somewhere that's going to still repeat this process. The scale of it ties back into this because these powers are so much larger than the human anything can be. Even if that's all the humans on the planet united, it's still we're ants compared to some of these elder gods, right? So it's sort of like this Sisyphus with the stone pushing it up the hill that keeps rolling down. You're like, no matter what, it's still gonna go down the hill. That's just what it does, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And I think that is one of the things I think is really hard to manage because no one wants to keep playing a game where it's hopeless, So I think some of these things we already kind of incorporate into games. It's just you need to take it from a smaller theme to the larger side of the theme, right? But the hopelessness part, we don't really address that in many games. It might be there in the background in the, the struggle against the bad guys or whatever, but that's a very different thing of trying to build your power before you finally beat the big bad, right? Where in this, you're not really beating the big bad. You're more like kind of slowing them down, maybe. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I guess it's just, I don't know. There's like, when you read a lot of these stories, it's just the at the end of them, there's this sense that none of it mattered. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like when the story ends and they either die, go crazy, or go missing, it was always a foregone conclusion, right? And I know a lot of people have like in a story, it's okay. That doesn't bother me to read, right? But I do understand and am sympathetic to the idea that can be very frustrating in an RPG sense. And I think that's a delicate balancing act, and that's probably the hardest thing about doing Cosmic Horror. And part of the reason why I think they really, really good as one-shots, because you just drive it like a rental and whatever. And then you can have multiple one-shots that kind of link up with different pieces of them. But like to have a long-running campaign and maintain that level of sort of despair through the entire thing is really, really hard to do, and not just crush people's hopes and be like, let's just play something else. you know?
Well, I think if you wanted to do like a long running campaign, it makes sense to stretch out the things that are individually weird.
Right.
In kind of a sort of cop investigative scenario. Right. And then you know, as you do with a series, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, we're doing Doctor Who or whatever, and I have these 10 episodes wherein each little investigative thing is happening, but along the way there are clues to a bigger thing that is happening, and then there's like a series conclusion at the end for whatever this singular big bad thing is.
Right on. So, do you have any big examples to point to for Cosmic Horror that are like some of your favorite things? Like, whether that's graphic novels or movies or books or whatever?
Let me think on it for a second. Because my favorite Cosmic Horror things are mostly playing Cosmic Horror games. I mean, like, I listened to all of the Chambers short stories. And, well, I mean, I guess really, like I mentioned, Hellraiser. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like the Cenobites are infinite and beyond human understanding to a certain degree.
I agree.
But it feels like something different.
Well, it's like Lovecraft plus Clive Barker. And like...
Someone said Lovecraft S&M, and I was like...
yeah.
Yes.
Well, because I really, really enjoy Clive Barker, and he is terrifying, and he has a terrifying imagination. But he is very like when people said that they read Chambers and Lovecraft and Poe for the first time, it was like, whoa, there's nothing like this, you know? I really feel like that's what Clive Barker is. When the first time I read some of his stuff, it was like, wow, there is, like, this dude is on another level of, I don't even know what it is, but there's nothing else out there like him. And so I definitely feel like the Hellraiser stuff is, the Cenobites are very sort of like elder goddish in their own way, although they are a little more relatable in that they are human shaped. Well,
and they were previously
right. But I think the way that they sort of overcome that is you see how inhuman they are. Right, you get sort of, as the stories and the movies go along, you get exposed to how less than human they actually are. So it's like a way to like lull you into a sense of security because it might be familiar, but in fact it is not at all. So cool use of that. Do you have any others?
Uzumaki.
So Uzumaki is a Japanese horror film, and Uzumaki quite literally means spiral in Japanese, from what I understand. And I don't know if you can find that easily anywhere, but it is a great flick.
Near as I can tell, like, you're killed by the idea of a spiral. Yeah. Like, it's something that, like, gets into your brain and makes you mad, like crazy mad. And you basically just, like, kill yourself. So, yeah. It's a good example because like there's nothing to even physically fight.
Right.
Like,
it's the reason why I like Hastur so much is the idea, like ideas as poison or ideas as weapons is really, I think, a really kind of intriguing idea. So I've got one for you that may not be on there, but mine is Sphere. Is a movie from the 90s or early 2000s. And I think Dustin Hoffman's in it and maybe Lawrence Fishburne. I can't remember. But there is a sort of super science sphere that they find deep, deep, deep under the ocean. It's one of those things where there's nothing really to fight. It's this sort of technology thing sort of reacting to the people that are there sort of poking and prodding at it. They're there like sort of like at the behest of the government, basically. And so it's definitely worth watching. It's really kind of cool, and it has a lot of cool suspense and dread moments that are easily using some of those techniques to bring them into your horror gaming. So I don't want to give anything away, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's kind of a super technology that we're not capable of understanding that causes problems. And obviously, there's all the already Lovecraft movies that are out there, and some of them are better than others, but like Dagon and Reanimator and that kind of stuff.
Annihilation. Mm-hmm. With Natalie Portman and like the weird other world bubble that they find, and it's like this prism rainbow color that like alters the genetics, but it has like a mind of its own. Yes, that movie, very much cosmic horror.
Yeah, oh yeah, very much, and it's
and it has all of the things we talked about. Like there's science, there's the quest for knowledge, there's infinity, there's alien.
You know what? Like, something that is really common, a theme that we didn't mention, is sort of like this weird time loop kind of stuff where time is sort of fluid, or like...
You could say it's like a wibbly wobbly...
Timey-wimey.
Timey-wimey.
I like Doctor Who, but yeah, well played. But like where you encounter something and you realize that you caused that in a different universe or timeline kind of a thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And there's these sort of like mind-bending moments that happen where you realize that your demise, you actually caused your demise in another timeline maybe, you know? And that's a weird mind-melting kind of a thing.
There is a really interesting Doctor Who episode where they're like mining on the edge of this like black hole or whatever, and they find this creature that he's the actual devil or whatever, and he's like survived through, he's basically like an elder god, you know, he's survived through all of these different time periods and universes, and then they find him here, and so then like the Doctor's like, but I don't believe in religion and any of this stuff. What do you mean? Cool, like story. We don't have that thing, and he's having like, you know, like a mini mental breakdown.
Which Doctor
of what's
is
happening. Tennant.
So 10th Doctor?
Yes.
Right on. I have to check it out. I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's like a two-parter. It was a pretty interesting episode.
Very cool. All right, so do you have any other cool sources of inspiration to mention real quick before we sort of move on? Or
I mean, I don't know. That's more like sci-fi.
There's a lot of them out there that I know we're missing, but like...
Well, I'm just thinking about the comic book... well, no, like... I guess both of them that I like could work. So there's Rejection.
I haven't read those, but I know what you're talking about.
Should I just combine the names of both of them together into one? What I meant to say was Regression.
Regression, right.
and so in that one you have this cult, but they figured out kind of how to transplant themselves through the generations, and then there's stuff with like repressed memories and previous lives, and there's this giant bug creature that's like vying for domination of the world basically, and it's just this never-ending battle between the good guys trying to stop the bug cult and the regenerating, and but it's all the same cast of characters regenerated again and again and again, and some of are aware and some are not, and so it's really interesting that way. So you get that kind of infinite look, but you actually get to see two different narrations of the same sort of story playing out. And plus it's gruesome and absolutely disgusting. And then the other one is Injection. And it is more of a computer virus gone evil. It's got that sort of 2001 HAL Space Oddity feel combined with a very Cthulhu-esque monster fighting backdrop, which is pretty cool. Oh, it also has the science thing, because the whole reason that this is like in the being to begin with, they tell you like in the first set of books or whatever, is that there's this group of people that have decided that basically like the ideas of mankind are becoming stale, and if they don't do something, then like the world as we know it, like humanity is just going to like stagnate and not progress with future innovations. So they come up with some kind of scheme between like the hacker, and then there's like this sort of druid magic kind of guy. Anyway, so they all put their heads together and they come up with this terrible idea to like inject it's an injection into history that changes the course of events and makes this like sentient intelligence that's designed to basically just mix things up so that the world doesn't stagnate and then it becomes terrible. So it's like a terrible monster of their own creation, actually. But Anyway.
All right, so moving on from like sources of inspiration and all that kind of stuff, the games that I think we're probably going to agree on this that do this best is going to be Call of Cthulhu and Trail of Cthulhu. Are there any other ones that you can think of that do cosmic horror really well?
I mean, we talked about fairy tales, but it's definitely possible to do a cosmic horror kind of game with the Fae setting because they're like elder gods. I mean, it's just a different spin on them,
in the
really.
changing the lost sense of things.
Yes, exactly. So I think you could use that to do a similar feel.
Right.
Especially set in the modern day.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, I hadn't even thought about it that way. But yeah, you definitely could.
It could be really interesting if you put it in space, too. Like, what do the Fae outside of our own planet look like? Like, clearly they're not an isolated entity just on this planet, you know? Right. Anyway.
Right on. So when it comes to Trail of Cthulhu and Call of Cthulhu, we're going to focus more on Trail because that's where most of our experience is. But also, I think just Trail works better personally, mechanically, and the way it's all set up than Call of Cthulhu does anyway. But one of the things that's nice about Trail of Cthulhu is that it has this death spiral mechanic with sanity and stability, which I feel like if you want to do cosmic horror, that's sort of part of the mind-breaking part of it, is that you have to have some kind of sanity or stability or corruption or some kind of resource that the players have that is going to be whittled away as they descend down towards madness or inhumanity or whatever it is the bottom of that looks like, right? Mm-hmm. So this is one of these things that ties back mechanically to Hopelessness, because depending on which version of Trail of Cthulhu you're running, whether it's like the pulpier version or I can't remember what it's called, but maybe it's called Dust or something, the more hopeless version of it, the more actual Lovecraftian version, is that you don't really gain those resources back. As you spend them encountering terrible things, they're just gone. Right. And you don't recover sanity points. You just they get whittled away. And so that very closely ties back to the Hopelessness, because as you see those, being whittled down and you can't get them back, you realize, it's only a matter of time. And it's like a mechanical way to reinforce that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Does it make sense? And it's very easily, if you wanted to do this sort of kind of a cosmic horror thing in any other system, you could very easily pull that mechanism into it. So whether it's you just decide, if it's like in a D&D OSR kind of a thing, maybe your wisdom becomes your sanity points or something, right? And then that's a resource that gets whittled away. Or you could make that decision based off of any statistic in there, whether it's for a D&D game or the Genesis system or Numenera, Cypher or whatever it is. But there's, it's really easy to pull over, and it's a numerical value that's, if you give the players a resource to track, they're always going to look at it as that number keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and being like, oh no, like, do I really want to go in there? I don't think I can take, a couple more sanity damage, or I'm just going to be checked out and crazy guy, and now you're going to have to fight me. So the other thing that is nice about Trail of Cthulhu is they have the touchstones, which are sort of like your connections to the real world. So people that keep you grounded. So whether that's like the bartender that you go have a whiskey with and you sort of, talk to him and lay things out for him, to sort of relieve your stress. And while those may seem like they are tools for the players to sort of get rid of their characters' anxieties and stresses and derangements or whatever, it's actually, it does that, but it's also a button for the game master to push, because their connection to you puts them in danger by proximity to the other, right?
Right. Yeah, it's the classic Lois Lane dilemma.
Yeah. That's kind of a boring way to put it, but yeah, because well, no, Lois Lane is just terribly boring.
Mary Jane.
Yeah, no, she's boring too. They're not good characters. Like, I guess they got better as time went by, but like at the foundation of where that character came from, they're kind of boring. But I see what you're saying, though. They're the sort of like the foiled, like to bring out the other side of those characters or whatever. But basically, in a game, all we're really using those for is ways to apply leverage to the characters and take away things that they value. And also, as they continue to encounter these cosmic experiences and that kind of stuff, they're going to become further and further away from humanity. And they should be realizing that I'm not like the rest of the people anymore, because I know that there are boogeymen out there, and I know that there are things that go bump in the night that are real, right? And so as you take away those those touchstones, it sort of separates them from the things that keep them grounded in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you don't want to just, crush them in a boring kind of a way, but the player should expect, especially in a Trail of Cthulhu or a Yellow King kind of a game, that those things are going to get pushed on and they're going to get messed up and destroyed, and then it becomes a balancing act between, do I protect them or do I protect the world and try and stop the cultist or whatever.
So something that those games don't have that I would point to that another game has that is pretty cool. So when we're talking about cosmic horror, we're talking about the strange, the alien, the abnormal. And it's really easy to set up encounters that are normal.
Right.
For lack of a better word, I guess. So, you're just going along like your average investigative game. And so you can kind of lose track of what's weird and unusual here. Like, I would encourage people to crank up the wrongness at any time that they possibly can. And some of that is in reimagining the challenge that you're presenting people. So, your cultists, like, what do they look like? They just look like dudes in hoods? Like, surely we could make that a little stranger, There could be something else going on there. So, like the Lamentations, the random esoteric creature generator. Right. Like, I would like the same level of weirdness to be able to be present in these cultist games. Like,
yeah,
your adversaries could be a lot more interesting than they are.
Yeah. So just to give you an example of how weird it can be, I rolled up randomly a creature out of there because I was trying to show Isaiah how to game master, right? And so my random creature was a beaver creature with thick, oily hair that also had fly eyes, like multi-lensed eyeballs, and the huge beaver teeth and wings. And just from those things kind of spiraled out this weird dam-creating beaver fly hybrid that also nested in the trees that could swoop down and gave terrible, awful bites because the teeth were so dull. And the oily fur and all that. Like, it was just a really weird combination of things that existed. So when it comes to random tables, I think one of the things that they do really well is put things together that you probably would never, ever consider putting together, because fly beaver is not something that was ever, I thought, going to come out of my mouth. But it was a really weird, creepy kind of, encounter or whatever. And it was just a couple dice I rolled, and that's just what came up. And it was like, oh, that's okay. Mm-hmm. So how do we figure out how to make these things make sense? And how does the combination of these two creatures,
And when you're dealing with a world that's a little bit magic and or a little bit science, it's an easy thing to fix. Like, either the creatures are hiding or they're in plain sight. So if they're in plain sight, are they wearing disguise? Are they using telepathy to make people think that they just look like normal? Do they have some kind of, force field generator, or, however weird you want to get to make people be fooled? But, consider just making things a little bit stranger. And then the other thing that can kind of disconnect people from their safe, comfortable reality that I like is the cards that are in Itris B. And they're for surrealism, but I could very easily see that idea working in a cosmic horror sense as well, where there's something that can just be changed that you used to think was safe and stable.
Do you want to explain the cards from Itris B?
Right. So at any point, like, if you're just, bored at the table, or you're in a tricky position and you're trying to distract someone or get at any point, anytime you feel like it, for whatever reason, you can decide to draw a card from this deck. And it just makes random things happen. So one thing was like a complete change of the literal scenery where you're standing right now. So previously I was on a grassy knoll. Now all of a sudden I'm on top of a building in the middle of the city.
Right.
Like, full on change of the immediate reality happens.
Right. So I think I think it's a really sort of an interesting way to sort of inject some really bizarre moments that would be kind of mind melting into the game. I hadn't considered because the reason those exist in HSB is to sort of give the game a very surreal feel, because once you draw the card, everyone just accepts that this is the new reality and moves on with their day, right? Now, to make that like a cosmic horror effect is that the item on the card would happen, and then you would have to find a way, like, how does everyone react to that? Because you wouldn't be accepting it as just, this is what happens here.
Well, and I think it would be a really interesting way to incorporate the aspects of insanity that you see where you're always like, well, there's this dusty old tome and reading it breaks your mind. Well, here's a card. This is what I actually see while the rest of the world remains the same.
That's a really cool use of that, because then you could just give... Well, man, that'd be really fun, even as a game master. So, okay, so here's the situation. This is really cool and fun, I think. So, I'm running this game, right, and we're playing a Trail of Cthulhu game, right, or whatever, right, and you read the Nameless Cults or whatever, right, and your mind breaks. So we have the deck of HSB cards out, right, and there's a lot of them. There's like 50-some cards in the deck, I think, maybe 60. So you could sort through and pick the ones that you wanted to have in there and narrow it down to maybe 15 or 20 of them if you had some that were more thematically appropriate for what was going to happen in your game. And then you could just give one to the player, and then even as a game master, you may not even know what it actually is. So then it's like trying to have that moment of fun where everyone at the table is trying to figure out what the heck is happening. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, that could be a fun moment for the game master, because sometimes it's not game breaking. Like, it's just how your player is going to react to things. Like, no, I can't go over there. There's the edge. There's a ledge, or whatever. Like, whatever the problem is.
It makes it easier to comprehend as a player to actually act that out when you have some kind of clue.
Right, it gives you something tangible to latch onto, to sort of cling to, and see how that mental break happens or whatever, right? That's a really cool idea. I hadn't even considered that. That's fun. And most importantly, it's really cool, but it's also fun for everyone at the table to be like, wait, what? What is he doing now? And I can see a sort of... a lot of, mayhem and trouble coming from that. And it's I guess it makes the consequences a little more tangible.
Not everybody has the Introspy game, but you could easily do this with insanity card options from Mansions of Madness, because if you're playing Trail of Cthulhu, odds are pretty good that you probably also have that.
Right. Yeah, the trauma
and that
cards
would be at least a good place to start.
Yeah, the mental trauma or insanity cards. Yeah, you're right. That's a good resource too. That's really awesome. I've been thinking about that a lot, about different board games that we have and some of the things and cards and stuff that are in there, to use them, like multi-purpose them for different things, and that kind of stuff. So that's a really another really cool use. And you're probably right. If you play Trail of Cthulhu, you probably have some version of Mansions of Madness or something or whatever. So. Right on. So the only other thing that I want to touch on is this hopelessness part of it is more the management of it, right? So if we're playing a longer game, like if it's a one-shot, I feel like you can drive the hopelessness home right away, because everybody knows it's a one-shot, right? So it's not a big deal. So then it becomes more of a thing of like, my character knows it's hopeless and I'm probably going to die or go crazy, but I will be the hero of the story, and I will die or go crazy, but I will stop things, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the happy marriage of those two things happening in a one shot, right? But if you're running a longer game or an ongoing campaign or whatever, you have to find a way to manage both the character's morale and the player's morale, right? Because you don't want to push the character's morale down so far to where it doesn't make sense that they're still doing this anymore, right? Now, in some ways, Trail of Cthulhu takes care of this because you have a motivation, and it's sort of like when everyone else is running away from the danger, why is your character running towards it? So it gives you a mechanism to say, well, this is just sort of the thing that I do, and this is why I do it, right? But obviously that has limits too, so you've got to kind of find a way to manage that. The other thing is that you have to manage the players, because there's a reason why certain games don't get played very often, because, Twilight Imperium or Monopoly or whatever, these games take forever, right? And once you get so far down, if you're not doing well, it's hopeless and you don't want to play it, right? It's not fun anymore. So you still have to, drive this hopelessness home, but manage the fun as well. And that's a delicate balance to find. So one of the things that I would suggest is to let the players continue to accumulate small victories of some kind. But in the big scheme of things, it doesn't really stop anything, right? So you're not trying to steal their thunder. It's not like, hey, we recovered the mask they were using to accomplish the ritual. Oh, they stole it back. Hey, we got the mask again. Nope, they stole it back again. That's not compelling. It's boring. And it's just bad storytelling, right? So the small victory would be, oh, you stole the mask. Oh, but now either the cult has shifted who they're trying to summon or what they're doing, or they found a new ritual that they're trying to enact. There's always some sort of change to what is happening. So while they may have set them back a little bit, in the big scheme of things, they're always still pushing towards their goal of summoning this elder god or whatever, right? And so this accumulation of small wins, I feel like you can kind of string a game along for a while till things begin to reach a fever pitch. And in the last couple sessions, they begin to realize, oh, this is what's actually at stake, or, oh, this is how big this has gotten, and we are not capable of really controlling what's happening here, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I would offer a counterpoint in that perhaps the occasional small failure is also an okay thing to show that, oh, okay, well, like we failed here, but this, was not the absolute end of all things, to give them a chance to get back up and rally.
Right. Oh, yeah. And that failure should come with some kind of new information or whatever. So maybe they fail at their task, but they succeed in gaining information that will help them at the next thing or whatever, right? A new way to confront the cultists or the enemies or the Hounds of Tindalos or whatever it is, right? So while they may have failed in the moment, the next time that they have this encounter, they'll be better prepared to deal with it. So I thought maybe we might just geek out for a minute a little bit. Do you have any favorite moments of cosmic horror in games that we've played, maybe, as an example?
You're asking me a lot of hard questions for somebody who's very tired. I don't remember the game we were playing, but I was like so convinced that we were probably actually going to pull this thing off, and we were like ended up being in some underground sort of like subway station, and there was like homeless people that had been like beheaded, and I don't even know what was happening, but we were definitely not going to win in any way. So the big creature comes out and we all die, and I was like, oh. Why was I surprised that happened? So we were clearly never going to live.
That was the intro adventure in the back of the Trail of Cthulhu book.
It was quite good.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was good times.
It was, well, no, if you're looking for a adventure that's not super big and super long, because some of these adventures are very involved and there's a lot happening, right? But the one in the back of the core book of the Trail of Cthulhu book is really pretty concise, and it displays all the elements of what Trail of Cthulhu does really well.
It sort of reminded me of Ghostbusters if it had been a rated R movie instead of like PG.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot of badness and horror and decapitation and...
it was really gruesome.
No, it's a good adventure. It really is well put together. It's I guess this is one of the reasons why I like Trail and Call of Cthulhu so much, because like their adventures are so well put together and structured and researched and all that kind of stuff. So they're just really, really good. So for me, we haven't mentioned it in a long time, but a couple of HillCons ago,
I was thinking about that one too.
We did a cultists versus investigators. So the initial part of the game, I ran the cultists, I ran the cultists, and it was fun to run cosmic horror on the other side of things because I hadn't done that a whole lot. So it was like, as we were doing things, the players were managing their sanity loss because they were still losing humanity because we used the World of Darkness system to do it.
If we could figure out how to make that into a zine.
Oh, yeah, it'd be great.
Like, that was some next level.
Oh, it was a lot of fun.
Next level stuff.
But you'd have to have like...
That was a brilliant idea.
8 players and 2 GMs. There's a lot happening there, but we could totally do it.
Listen, it's not a zine for everyone.
It's all good. But so, on both ends of things, there were people... Like it was a classic Call of Cthulhu adventure with, artifacts had to be stolen and recovered to summon this elder god and all this kind of stuff, and sacrifices and human death and whatever and gore. But at the end of it, there was a confrontation between the investigators and the cultists at the ritual site, like when the culmination of the ritual is happening. So there's gunfire happening and the cultists are dying, but they're still trying to sacrifice themselves so the ritual can happen. And at the end of it, the ritual got stopped. And I guess this would point towards those small victories where they were like, hey, we won and we stopped them. And then the realization sunk in that this is a thing that will continue to happen. Like, these planets will align again. And then...
See you here at the next third lunar cycle.
Right.
Here.
So then what do you do, right? Is this just now your new life? Is that you're just going to come back here on the third Wednesday of the month every year to smack down some cultists and hope you keep winning and can hold your sanity together, And that's... one of those awesome moments we had, and it was very player versus player in that case. The realization of everyone, being like, oh, well, who really won that scenario? Because the cultists were like, oh, we got stopped, but, we've got these artifacts all, and we've done the first 3 steps of this ritual. So now the next group just needs to come in and sort of like push the ball over the 2-yard line or whatever, right? And the investigators were like, nope, we stopped and we won. Oh, wait, it's not over? It was one of these great moments of sort of like, if you're trying to do an epilogue for a game, how does this sort of play out at the end or whatever,
Interesting all of a sudden idea that I had is that we could do that exact same thing with the 3 witches setting.
Oh.
Anywho, I'm ready to be done on this podcast now. So we should wrap this up.
Yeah, I was, but that
has nothing to do with the current topic of conversation.
No, I agree, but it just set my mind to rolling a little bit as to how we would put that together. Interesting. All right, well, I think that will do it for us this week. Do you have anything else to mention about Cosmic Horror?
No.
No. Other than it's awesome and I think a highly underutilized genre of gaming. I definitely think that it's I think one of the easier transitions to move to from like a traditional D&D kind of gaming, because assuming that you shift gears and realize that people are going to die and go insane, because there's creatures and there's eldritch lore, and that's a lot, some of the big themes in D&D gaming. But I think it's an easier transition to make sometimes. Do you know what I'm saying? Basically, I'm just trying to tell everyone, go out and try some Trail of Cthulhu because it's awesome. And in addition to everything that we've said here, there's a lot of great advice in the Trail of Cthulhu book about how to run investigative games and manage cosmic horror stuff and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely worth checking out if you want some additional resources to look at. There's lots of great advice in there. So as you know, we're a member of the Gonna Geek Network. So quick plug for Game Life Balance Australia, episode 85. Her chicken. It's pronounced, Eichlin. What? They got some funny letters put together in there. I don't know. It must be some kind of Aussie thing or something. So, this week, the lads discuss the Shantae franchise, Magic the Gathering, car registration, Thailand's worrying obsession with Nazi imagery, divisive snack foods, and the answer to all social media problems in America. Spoilers, there's more. It's more guns. The battery capacity of the lightsaber, cultural misappropriation, Rob's burgeoning Switch lust, and AC's fancy new monitors. There's a lot happening there in that episode, so check them out. That is Game Life Balance Australia, episode 85, and you can check them out on the Gonna Geek Network. As always, thank you for hanging out with us, and if you like what we do here at Just More Fix and you want to support us and get access to all of our pre-shows and raw audio feeds and our quarterly zine, you can support us at patreon.com/justmorefix, like all of our awesome Patreon supporters, like Treza, Tiziano Furlano, Alistair H., Simon McNair, Alan White, and the OG Todd Olson. We hope to see you guys at Gen Con here in a couple weeks, and we will see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.